Right. Hi, everyone. Welcome again to another edition of SAI Nano Chats, where we chat with founders and directors of nonprofits, initiatives who are working on STEM programming around the world. My name is Faniel Moindi. I'm the founder of SAI, the STEM Advocacy Institute that hosts these Nano Chats. This week, super excited, very, very excited to have the founder, Eddie Rubin of Science Core, who will tell us more about the program that is operational as we speak, and they're looking for people to apply for the programming. So I'm super excited to run into them very randomly on Twitter, and now here we are chatting and learning more about this. So very excited to learn more. Eddie, I'll pass it on to you.
Great. Well, thank you very much, Fanuel, and the opportunity to present Science Core. And so Science Core is a young organization. It's about really sort of in our second year of operations, and its real focus is on bringing science education to underserved regions or underserved communities. Okay, and so the problem we're addressing is that students in many economically undeveloped countries receive inadequate science education. And I think this is something that you're very familiar with. And so why do we, let's see, let me move to the top of the thing is, I'm not quite seeing my whole, okay. Why do we want to improve science education? I think it's clear addressing climate change, feeding the world, creating jobs, all require population educated in science, technology, engineering, and math. And this is even more important in the economically undeveloped world than it is in the economically developed world. And so how do we address this problem? And the way Science Core works is that we place recent PhD scientists in underserved regions to create curriculum, develop hands-on science projects, teach science, and inspire students. And I think what the unique feature of Science Core is really targeted at PhD scientists. And we're really looking for them. There are lots of programs that send educators into the developing world. I think really our focus is to send scientists. And the reason for that is that we're hoping to use them to develop curriculum and state-of-the-art curriculum, as well as inspire future scientists. There's nothing like a young scientist teaching a science course that inspires students. That they can do that too. And from our short history, we experience that students tell their teachers they want to become a scientist from this exposure. And we place them in partner schools. And so the way we work is we take STEM PhDs and we have calls out, and we try to get really excellent ones. Why PhDs and why recent ones? And it's just for the reasons I said. We're really hoping that they will provide content and help schools develop state-of-the-art curriculum as well as inspire. And then we place them in host sites. And these are special kinds of schools. They're hubs for science education. And so there's schools that develop curriculum and pass it out to surrounding schools. And we're looking for places where the PhD scientists can really have an impact. And what these hub schools do is they accumulate the state-of-the-art science curriculums, and they share it with surrounding schools. Okay, so what do we look for in host sites? And as I said, we want to identify educational programs where trained scientists can have a significant impact, and partner schools that serve as hub for science education in the region. So we're really looking for schools that can take advantage of having a trained scientist there and the content they bring. Curriculums in the Philippines, and the Philippines is challenged in that recently it has gone from 10th grade to 12th grade, and so there's a real paucity of science curriculum between 10th and 12th grade, and there's paucity of teachers, and so Science Core is really contributing there. The other place we go is a very different kind of setting. It's Avishkar Center in northern India. And this is a nonprofit that develops hands-on curriculum. And so what they do is they develop sort of science modules that are transferred to local teachers in local schools. And they use these science modules in teaching. And both these two schools have a similar feature in that both the schools were started by Filipino and Indian scientists that had trained in the United States and Europe, and they came back to India and to the Philippines to raise science capacity. And so they're very excited about having Science Corps fellows there. They're really excited to have real scientists. And so there's really a pull from the host sites towards the unique capabilities that a real scientist brings. And so what do we look for in Science Corps fellows? We look for excellent recent PhDs who are between receiving their PhD and the next step in their scientific career. And so that next step can be a postdoc, it can be a faculty position, it can be going into policy, or going into industry. And we're looking for people that are going to have an impact, that will be great fellows, and we'll be able to call upon them later on to make contributions. Okay, so this is our cohort so far. These are the 5 fellows that have been out there or about to go out there. Jin Shim and Victor Soho were respectively in the Philippines and India. Jin is now in a postdoc at UC Berkeley, and Victor has a faculty position in the Museum of Natural History. In the Philippines, Jen, Dr. Shim, taught, and she's a bioinformatist, taught 300 students coding and biology, developed biology curriculum, and importantly organized and taught an artificial intelligence workshop in the local community for all the local educators. Victor developed hands-on biology training in India. He developed a website for Science Corps host schools where they could transfer their curriculums to other schools. Uda and Elizabeth are going to India, while Doug Shin just arrived today in the Philippines. And so these places, we have a steady cadre of Science Corps fellows that will every semester be there. Okay, so that's basically what we're about. Our short-term goals are, and right now we have 2 host sites. We like in the next year to add another host site of the sort of the features that we have in these 2 host sites. We want to expand our development, outcome, and impact measurements. We hope in the next 2 years to have 11 more fellows to be out and have had this Science Corps experience. We'd like to develop relationships with elite PhD granting institutions where graduate students can be able to say, hey, maybe the next thing I'll do a Science Corps fellow. And this is something that will help them, become global scientists. And with regard to the organization, right now we're funded and we can operate for a while at this level, but we'd like to develop a external funding process. Right now we're internally funded, and we mature as we're a nonprofit, a sponsored project, but we'd like to develop a mature organization. That's where we are now, or in the next 2 years. Where do we want to go in the next 10 years? And one of the possibilities is to grow, to have 10 centers and send out 50 or so fellows each year. Become a well-known, prestigious fellowship for scientists. That's something you want to have in your CV that people know about. Develop a steady funding stream. Other possibilities, and these will all be decided in the next 10 years, is develop a parallel program for professionals in the tech industry. There's a lot of, particularly in the Bay Area, there's a lot of capability. People would like to do something like this, and people working at Google and Facebook really want to have offer this kind of opportunity. And so maybe we could channel that. Another thing is, why is Science Corps just being done in India and the Philippines? Why not the US? There are lots of underserved areas. And this is something that also we can contemplate in the future, is to place Science Corps fellows in the US. And so you had asked about this matrix you have and so I tried to Science Corps logic model. But the problem is that students in economically undeveloped countries receive inadequate science education. The mission is to bring science education to underserved regions. The input is Science Corps fellows. The other input is, finding host sites that serve as hubs for science education. The activities of the fellows develop curriculum, teach, and inspire students. The activities of the host sites is to gather and disseminate curriculum. Output are state-of-the-art science curriculum, cadre of students seeking careers in STEM disciplines, cadre of scientists with global perspectives. And output of the host sites are curriculum shared with other schools. And some of the outcome measurements are increased percentage of students pursue a STEM career from the host sites, improvement in STEM test scores. We'd also like the Science Corps alumni to be changed by the experience and have increased engagement in global science education outreach. And one of the outcomes of the host sites will be many schools using the curriculum developed by the Science Corps Fellows. And the assumption of the overall program is that PhD scientists can develop state-of-the-art curriculum and inspire an interest in science in students. And so that's what this is all based on, is why we're sending out scientists to promote science education in underserved regions. And so that's Science Corps in a nutshell of where we are and where we may be going in the future.
Awesome, Eddie, that was fantastic. And thank you so much for doing this slide. Actually, if you can leave this up,
okay,
this would be great, because usually people don't have this slide and I have to like try to parse it out of them.
Okay.
So we can just spend time on this. And I want to
Sure.
start on the assumption actually that you're making here. This idea that these PhD scientists are essentially, they're going to have the knowledge and know-how to teach, right? Basically, they're going to be teaching students and develop curriculum. Do you train them in this, or
yeah?
How do you address this?
Yeah, no, I think that's a good question. So that's an assumption I put down, but I guess the assumption is that they can teach. And,
right.
And the settings we're in are settings that are kind of controlled. Like, we send the fellows to these places a month in advance, and they get trained in the teaching style of the school. I think this would be hard to do in the United States, because I think, but in India, the two settings we're in, particularly in the Philippines, is a very controlled setting. And so what we have the Science Corps Fellows teaching subjects that connect to where their PhD. And so it has, they develop their lesson plans in advance of beginning the semester. And so it's worked very well, at least from our minimal exposure. And in India, it's really, the fellows are really not so much doing direct teaching, but they're developing, experiments that can be done in classes, simple PCR kind of experiments, simple physics and chemistry kind of experiments. They call them science in a box. And so we're providing to India, like, they're very much physics, math oriented. We're providing fellows with backgrounds in chemistry and biology who are developing teaching aids in those areas. Right.
Because that's the thing. The PhD scientists, their training is going to be quite diverse, right? And
yeah.
So,
well, we do try to match the area of expertise with the needs of
the local area, right?
Yeah.
Because that's your main input, are these scientists, right? As you put there, the Science Corps Fellows themselves that are coming in. The question there is, like, what kind of skill set do they have, or should they have?
Right.
Beyond those PhD training, just really diverse, and so,
right. But they usually have a foundation in first principles from much of these areas, and it's fun for them. It's fun for them to go back to sort of the basics. And the Philippines is in the Philippines, they developed this teaching approach that's meant for places which don't have many teachers. And it's really quite an unusual approach that's been successful there. But what they do is the teachers get up, basically. They spend the first quarter of the class not giving didactic lectures, but sort of writing principles. And the students are copying it. And then they feel like the exercise of the students copying it is that they need to pay attention to do that. And then they give the students assignments based on what they've learned right then. And they have to do the assignments right then. And the teacher really isn't doing that much teaching. What it is that day the teacher takes home and the assignment and sees what areas the students had problems with, and the next day reviews those areas. And so it's kind of their approach that they developed that's worked very well there. And so we're sending fellows that have content into settings where there are people that have thought hard about how they want their educational systems to work. And so,
yeah.
So that's,
yeah. And Maria, I see you're also online. I welcome, if you have any questions for Eddie, please jump in at any time. Okay. And let's see, there's a chat from Maria. Okay, so Eddie, this question is, what are the safety measures implemented when sending someone to a country whose language and culture they don't know? How do you help the fellows have the level of cultural competency necessary to be efficient?
Right, and so that's a really good question, and we're really so that's why we work really hard on finding host sites. The host sites that we're having are pretty tame. The Philippines is they live with the directors of the school, and the Philippines is a culturally very interesting place, but it's kind of user friendly where the school is, and the same thing in India where we are. And so we're not looking to parachute fellows into hard places. And so it's only 6 months. We want them to have this teaching experience. So we're looking for sort of places where they can go that's culturally very different, where they can make a contribution, but not be enormously, safe places. We're looking at English-speaking places, and so that's where we are now, at least.
But for the areas that are the cultural competency, like what do you train the fellows or?
Yeah. I mean, what we do is we've developed in both places a very extensive workbook for the fellows, and we basically abridge some of the things that were in the Peace Corps manuals for these areas, as well as have the Science Corps fellows that were there previously, and so the fellows get a pretty good overview. They're pretty good manuals that we put together. In addition, we speak with the fellows every week. A previous fellow will Skype with the present fellow to every week during the beginning and less later on, just to help them culturally acclimatize.
Yeah, because the danger is, I think, anyone trying to apply, they'll be thinking, oh my God, am I just going to be dropped off, right? And then figure it out 6 months.
Yeah, well, no, we're not parachuting them in. We're trying hard to put them in settings that are kind of defined and controlled. And then also the fellows that we're choosing, we're taking people that are pretty mature, that have had experiences. We're not taking, we're taking fellows that have been in similar kinds of places. Somehow the ones that we're attracting, both Americans and European trained scientists, and the ones we've been taking are ones that, it's one of the things that we rank them on, whether they've been exposed. When we speak to their references, one of the real questions we ask is what's your assessment of their ability to deal in a difficult setting? And it's one of the questions we also ask in our interviews. And so,
I see.
No, but I think that it's a really important issue, and I think all programs that send young people in the field, that's really an issue. Somehow, we've really attracted very mature fellows that are, they're not out of college.
Yeah, and just to be clear as well, you actually are accepting applications from around the world.
Yeah, right. No, right. Exactly.
It's not just the United States. It's really wherever, because I saw a couple of people there from different countries.
So we're really
very broad. So I looked at the problem statement. I think the problem statement makes sense. You're trying to bring this is a problem, right? I think we all, especially at SAI, we had to completely understand. With the mission, so bringing science education to underserved areas. So what kind of background do you do for the host sites, right? Because you go to areas where science education is underserved, right? So to the question about host sites, what do you look for in a host site, and what kind of background info?
Yeah, and so the host sites, we're really looking for places that like I said, are hubs. We're
Right.
not looking, it's not the worst school. It's a school that has a focus on spreading
Yeah.
their capacity. So we're looking for host sites that a scientist can make a unique contribution that they have lots of teachers that are people who have degrees in teaching.
Mm-hmm.
Sites where scientists can develop curriculum and they will spread their curriculum. And so we're hoping to both impact the students at that site as well as magnify their impact by sending them to places which will spread curriculum.
Right. So those infectious nodes essentially in a network, right, that are well connected to spread around the local area.
Right.
That's really important, right? You gotta have that network because then the hope is that they will go to those areas that are even harder to get to locally.
Yes. No, exactly. Like it'd be hard to send a Science Corps fellow for 6 months into a really hard setting.
Right.
But if we can, have a curriculum that they've developed be spread to that setting, so local teachers, it's sort of, and so that's how we're really touching.
I see.
Things, underserved areas.
And why 6 months?
Yeah, 6 months we came up with because it's really meant to be, our real goal is to give young scientists this experience. And my background is I've had lots of postdocs and graduate students. And 6 months is the amount of time that you feel comfortable somebody getting off the track and and getting back on. And so we sort of view it as sort of a short postdoc. And so you can do Fulbrights for a year, and it just seemed easier the 6 months for. We'd like to have hardcore scientists that are really interested in fundamental problems, have this exposure, and not be denied, fancy postdocs. So that's how we come to the number.
I see. And I guess as you're collecting data, right?
Yeah.
So because you had 2 fellows so far.
Yeah, right.
Whether 6 remains static, that's remains to be seen, right? You sort of calibrate as you go.
Right, and the 6 months is a semester too for the schools, and so it's one of the ways we can.
That's I think it's a good point actually. At the local time also seems to work. So moving a little bit to the curriculum development. So you've had 2 fellows. Have they developed any curriculums?
No, they have. Well, we've really had a third fellow I don't mention. Okay. It was really the third fellow was somebody that had the experience.
Yeah.
Where Science Corps existed and sort of pushed us to develop the program. And they've developed chemistry and math curriculums in the Philippines. They've developed boxes, and we developed a biology box, and so there are outputs that we can show for.
Yeah, I think those are great, especially the boxes. So we have part of our own fellows actually. Yeah. One of them is building a science in a box kind of thing, whereby their hope is that they'll create these and send these off to local schools, teachers, and then teachers can use them basically in their classroom and so forth. But I think I like the idea of these boxes being created. So these are outputs that you can count and measure, right? How many curriculums have you developed? Are they on your site? Do you plan to put them on your site so other people can see what exactly is being done?
No, this is done at this one place. Like, we are not setting up the system. Mm-hmm. Like, we're plugging Science Corps fellows into existing systems. Right. And the place in India which we came to is Avishkar, and they have been working for a bunch of years with the local systems developing these boxes, and they go to the schools. Yeah, and it's all open access, and you can find them on the web. And the hope is that, as well as the curriculums are on the web for local schools. But this one place, Avishkar, that is easy to find on our site, really has been, had a real focus on math and chemistry. Okay. And we've tried to bring in some biology into it to help them.
So the curriculums are hosted locally.
Right.
Okay.
right,
Because
right.
it'd be interesting to see them, right? Assuming it's some sort of document that is created.
Yeah, I'll look there, but I'm pretty sure they have a fair amount of description of what they do, and they have a real emphasis on, all girls schools.
I
But,
see. I
and
see.
India has this issue that I've learned in that there's very much rote education, and they're very much looking for people to understand principles rather than just memorizing everything. And so
Right.
these
Right.
boxes are really aimed at that. Right.
Yeah. And is that something for your metrics? I mean, so are you measuring that, right? Because rote memorization, you have in one of your outcomes is that you want them to, perform, just pursue some career track. But what other metrics? The improvement in STEM test scores. That's right.
Yeah, I
Um,
mean, I'll tell you, yeah, this is something that we're working on. We
okay.
haven't really, you know,
Okay.
metrics of these things are,
Yeah, because those are the hard part, right? What you have an outcome, like what metric do you
right,
need to be measuring, and what's the
right.
change that you're like looking to see, right? What direction?
Yeah, no, I think that, outcomes, how many schools are using the boxes, these kinds
Right,
of things, we can begin to put these things together. We
right.
haven't as put as much effort into that
Yeah,
as
but I think those are fantastic things that are there, right? With this logic model, you can absolutely see where the gaps are, right? And the things
yeah.
that you want to plug in
Yeah,
and
no, that's
amend.
great. It was great. It was good to be forced to, redo it. I think it was a good exercise.
The exercise, yeah. And we're doing the same thing too with each of our programming to figure out like, okay, this is what doesn't make sense, for example. I want to do go back a little bit also, because this program not only is it sort of affecting the local community, but
Right.
the idea part of it is also to affect the fellows themselves, right?
Yeah. So I haven't really talked. Yeah. No, that is, and those are things that are much become easier to measure.
Right,
You
right.
know,
So
and
what do you hope for the fellows? Like, what is the hope that they will get out of this?
yeah, and so the fellows is really to give a global perspective. I feel like much science education, people are on a track and they don't get off it. And
Mhm.
they know it's about problems in Cambridge and in the Bay Area, but not. And from this exposure, they will both, have an appreciation of global science education. Will stay connected to, the places where they spent their time. Will be changed from that experience. And so, and as far how do you measure that?
Right.
Uh, uh, how do you measure that? You see, other than questionnaires, with time you'll see how many are involved in global science education. Like we have some people that are going to do AAAS fellowships, interested in science policy, and hopefully this will get them a broader view, help them in their training. We have people that are just doing hardcore lab work. I mean, the one area we're not exactly interested in training, we have another person who's very interested in sort of outreach, international science outreach. And
Okay.
one thing we're not looking for is we're not so much looking for training teachers. Those are great things, but we'd
Mhm.
like to have fellows come back and either have a bigger amplification than just impact their students. And that's fine if somebody does that. But right now we're looking for, when we look at applicants, if somebody says, I want to become a teacher in a primary school someplace, it's less attractive than if they say, I want to do science policy, or we want to give this exposure. And so they have more knowledge to work in these other areas that may have a bigger impact than just teaching their classes after they leave Science Corps.
Yeah, because it ultimately just matters what sort of impact you want them to have on the field, right? Once they come back here,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah,
Teaching is just one domain, right? So if they want to go into teaching, and policy and other things are just others, right? Because you mentioned earlier, like 5-year, 10-year plan, right? You can have other like these industry folk, right?
yeah,
Interested in,
right.
right? And
That's a very interesting thing. I think it's,
Mhm.
I think those are, I think these organizations have resources and are very interested in have, and the people that work at these companies are interested in having, the kind of positive impact that something like Science Corps. We have gotten some money from Google and some of these organizations.
Yeah, exactly. To increase this, right? And so you said
Yeah,
you've had like 50 applications so far.
we
50
have,
applicants,
we
okay.
have.
And so you're
Yeah.
looking to increase that number, right? And
Yeah, we'd like to increase the applications. We'd like to find other sites. We'd
right,
like to have, I guess we're looking for applicants that are going to be movers and shakers. And so the impact, the Science Corps investment in them
mhm,
is magnified.
right. And so for someone that is interested, I mean, I'm sure they can learn more information on, of course, on your website.
Yeah. And
Uh,
I'm always willing to talk to people. This is a
right.
big, this is a big part of my interest. And so,
Right. Because I'm sure they'll have the main questions like, 6 months, is that very hard number? Can I do
right.
less, for
Yeah,
example?
no, we want townspeople, and so we're
Right.
willing to bend
Right.
to the needs. And the Philippines has pretty fixed time schedule. India is much looser. Both places are so interested in having Science Corps fellows that they're willing to bend however we need that.
Yeah, in terms of host sites as well, I mean, as we talked before, for example, places, I don't think you're in Africa right now, right? For
No,
example, right?
no. I mean,
But yeah, go ahead.
yeah, no, no, we're not, and that'd be great. But like I said, the questions you asked was,
Mhm.
we're looking for places where we can say this is a, we're not, this is a very defined, stable setting. We're looking for places, so there is some, the host sites are very important.
Right, right. And I think I like the model actually, because if you're to draw it out in a network, I like to think
Yeah,
about networks and nodes and
yeah,
if you can press the right node, right,
yeah.
your program, you can then affect a larger
Yes, yes. No,
network.
and I think both places we're in, I could draw a note of all the places that are touched with this, and so I think
Right.
that
Right.
others
In
could.
fact, I think that'll be a great diagram to see at some point where you
Yeah,
can
no,
draw.
I think that. Thanks for bringing that up. It's this has just come together in the last year and a half,
Yeah, which is amazing just to be
and
here.
but the ideas become, you hear, the points that people like and don't like help shape the program. It's like an experiment you're doing that someone says, yeah, this is a really interesting insight from that, helps you
Right.
shake it. So I appreciate this input, and I think the node idea is an interesting one.
Yeah, because the ones I'm thinking about as well, like of the nonprofit, because I think you're working with a school and a nonprofit, right? And
Mhm.
I think one of those two situations, the two fellows that you mentioned, um, there are some great nonprofits that are working, let's say, just for example, Africa,
Yeah,
that are on site that have access to schools, say.
yeah,
So that these
yeah,
are the nodes you're talking about. And
right.
then we actually have a database of them actually we created a Wikipedia page for them so we can know, we're interested in mapping these things,
Yeah, no, right.
and
No,
understand what they
that's
are. And
yeah.
even last week we were talking with one of our, another this participant in the nano chats who's in India, who's doing local, who has access to in Manipur, India specifically. And his
Yeah,
program it's quite, he's taking like Harvard undergrads uh,
right,
to there for a week. So his program is much shorter in time scale.
right.
Which brings me to my question: like, who else is sort of doing your modeling? Is there someone else that's doing this in this?
I don't know. I mean, part of the reason we set this up is because the first fellow went looking for someplace, wanted to take a break between their, getting their degree and beginning a postdoc. And when we went searching, there was just nothing that was really aimed at where scientists can make a contribution.
Mm,
And so, you could do a Fulbright; those are ones, and but then I guess they're the AAAS, but really are in Washington, and so there really weren't that many opportunities, or there weren't any
right.
that really that sent a Science Corps out there, a scientist, a PhD scientist out there. So there was, and there's Physicians Without Borders, which is a little bit, they take a really skilled person and they have them do something that requires those skills, and the skill that a scientist has, they understand science, and so therefore they should be able to contribute to teaching and
Mm.
creating state of the art. So that's how this came out of.
Right. So just a quick question here. How much is the stipend, by the way, for the fellows? Eddie, can you hear me? There's a break there.
We pay transportation, and housing is covered by the host site, and we pay insurance.
I see. Could you repeat again how much was the stipend? I think you broke up a little bit.
$500.
$500, but everything else you're saying is covered.
Yeah.
From their flight
Yeah.
to their local
Yes.
accommodation.
Housing. Yeah.
Okay, $500, and that's enough for 6 months for them.
Yeah. Well, it's right. It winds up $3,000 for 6 months, and in these places where they are pretty, cost of living is low.
Oh, $500 per month.
Per month. Yes.
Per month. Sorry. Yep. Okay. $500 per month. And how many fellows are you looking to have for the next session?
Yeah, the next session. Well, we have three out this time, and we'd like to get another 4. The following session, and we have a couple lined up. And so, I can imagine us, and we will in the next 6. We're beginning to look for new sites, and so.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. And that's where again we'll talk offline as well about other areas.
Yeah.
Potentially connecting you to some other people on the ground.
Right.
Are there timelines of application? Like when is the next deadline?
Yeah, it's June, December.
June. Okay, June to December. It's kind of
so we like applications by June, and so the next application will be December. But we'll look at applicants at other times. But those are really the big deadlines.
Because essentially they can apply even now, right?
Yes. Yes.
And then you set them up for next cycle.
Right. Right.
Okay. And the application's online and everything.
Yeah. Everything's at the site.
At the site. Okay. And the site again, sciencescore.com.
Yeah. Right.
Okay. Great.
.org. Yeah.
.org. .com.org. Yeah. And so I was just going back a little bit to your logic model, the output, because you were saying, right, there's lots to track, right? There's lots to track. And the hard part would be, what do you need to track?
Right.
What is critical that lets you know what you're doing is exactly what you think is happening, right? I think the number of students that in fact, I think you had a slide, you mentioned how many students, the 2 fellows or 3 had engaged. Of course, how many fellows you've had is 3.
Right.
But these are things these are outputs, right? You can just measure them specifically, which then lead into your outcomes, right? The idea that these outputs should feed into your outcomes. So the number of cadre of scientists with a global perspective, and we can talk about what is a global perspective. How do you even measure that, right? That's a different discussion. But
how do you
measure that? If that's an outcome, okay, what is a global perspective, and what can you do that? Oh, just a quick logistical question. What is the specific date for the June deadline? Is there a specific date?
Yeah, it's December 30th and June 30th.
June 30th. Okay, that's okay. June 30th, December 30th. Maria, that's she typed that question.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then so going back to the outputs and then the number of curriculum shared with other schools, I think that's a fantastic one. And I'm assuming this you can ask your local sites for this information, right?
Yeah.
How many times have you shared it, used? How is it used? Because I think that's the integration part, the impact, right? How many schools are using the curriculum developed by ACFL? That's a huge one, actually.
Yeah.
Right, because you can begin to see the network.
Yeah. No, I think an image showing the schools, because in the Philippines they're these visionary physicists that set up the school.
Wow.
And the government is really quite supportive of them, and they've got private philanthropy supporting them, so they're really movers and shakers and science, and they just love having the Science Corps fellows. Right.
And so you're trying to build your advisory board, right? Because I know you're trying to go into a nonprofit model.
I mean, I mean, right now we're I'm sorry.
Yes, sir.
We're very, very small, and it costs about $5,000-6,000 a fellow, and we can go on doing what we're doing for a while like this, and developing our structure, really developing boards, developing, it's a lot of effort, And so right now the effort is very much aimed at the fellows, placing them, selecting them, less on the organizational front. And so I guess that's the next step, is to develop these metrics, begin looking for external funding,
right?
Which, but getting the labor to do that is
yeah, it takes time, right? It takes time, and you have to start somewhere.
Like right now we are a sponsored project for
right.
And we get most of the things we need, so we'll see. I mean, we may putter along, sending out 4 or 5 fellows every year, or 6 fellows every year, and we can do that for a while, and or we could grow. And so I'm not sure. We'll have to decide that.
Yeah, I mean, I would recommend probably like just figure out your process first, right? Whether you have this, just does it work before you even scale.
Right.
Think about those, just making sure everything is, the wheel is where it's supposed to be.
Right.
And then if you see the need, then press play and just grow it out.
No, I think that's what we're going to do. I mean, I do have a sense that we have a niche.
Right.
And that there is funding out there for this niche, because and so maybe we'll fill it, maybe somebody else is, but it isn't. There hasn't been things really aimed at scientists to place them in settings that.
And Eddie, I would say also, just if you measure the number of applications you're getting, I mean, that is a number to track, because it tells you how many people are interested in this. If you have 3,000 applications, that tells you, man, there's something here.
Right.
Let's do it.
Right.
So, and you have that data. So.
No, it is a funny thing, the number of applications, and it's how do you get people's eyeballs?
It's that, and then the eyeballs, and then to actually get the CTR, right, click-through rate, over to the end.
Right.
And that's where, as we discussed, we're happy to share this, record it, of course, right?
I mean, we have good applicants. We're turning away some good applicants. But most of the ones that are at the bar, they're really quite impressive, many of the applicants. And so we have many ones that are terrible, but then the ones that are pretty good are usually all very good. They're really, you get scientists that finish, but they have a bigger quest than just lab work. They're very interesting. I enjoy the process of talking with them.
And I think there's something here to delve into, like this global perspective you're trying to get them to have, right? I think there's some deeper thought in terms of what can you actually measure on that front. For these people, so they're kind of before they go. Well, what's their current status, and then they come back. What's what they're doing, how they're thinking about problems now. Is it global in nature?
It's funny. One of the fellows that we have is very interested in, or not a fellow who wants to be a fellow, but she really has a career track that she's very interested in science outreach, just what Science Corps is doing. That we may try to figure out how to get her more engaged with the organization. It's because that is what her career plans are, and maybe we can somehow get some synergy from the two for her with this. But
I see. Yeah, I think there's a lot of potential here, a lot of moving pieces that I am seeing that other partners can work with you, actually, right, on the ground or offsite, to really scale this and get it into more places. And I think just summarizing the key on getting data, right?
Well, this is a very good conversation, Manuel. I mean, I may, I guess you probably understand this much better than you did previously.
Because for people listening, we've chatted beforehand, and I got one dimension. Now I'm like, wow, I'm better understanding the whole With the logic model, even better.
Yeah, and the logic model is cool. That's a good way of looking at it. And I think that maybe sometime we'll get you back and we'll go through some of these issues with
Yeah, exactly. Because
because you seem to be thinking about
a
like we
lot.
just got it running, you know,
Yeah.
rather than measuring it. But we need to do that.
Yeah, you gotta figure out do both, of course, at the same time if you had the time all the time in the world, but
Right.
start, measure, or measure start, whichever one as you go along.
Right. Right.
So in a sense, Eddie, if you were to summarize people watching this later, they're thinking about applying, like what would you tell someone who is just they're thinking about applying? What questions should they be asking themselves to help them make the decision?
Yeah, I think a couple of things. I think that if you don't understand science course, you get in touch with us. We have a lot of calls with people to give them a more three-dimensional view of what science core is about. Uh, and I think, some people, if you want to inspire yourself to, you've been doing science for a while, you want to connect it to reality. This is a way to do that and inspire yourself to keep your energy going. It's a long haul to getting a PhD. And so this is, we have fellows that, view this as great. It inspires them for the next stage of their training, be it at the bench or be it in some other aspect. And so I think, and it's always good to see the world. It's always good to see the way different people think about things and make a contribution. So I think this is a way that you can use your science to make a contribution.
Right. And I think the networking piece of it too, you can network with other people, meet other scientists, right, and locals, of course. And on that note as well, so a question from Maria was that saying, I mean, your fellows are basically a wealth of resource and knowledge, right?
Right.
They have tons of data. I think probably your answer is like, you're going to work on this, but have you been in touch with them, get data collection and analytics metrics for the success of the program? Like, what have they been telling you?
Oh, about the fellows that have come through?
Yeah, so far, because you've had three, right?
Yeah, we've had three. Yeah, I mean, they've all had really wonderful experiences. That's one part of it. They felt like they made a contribution. That they touched students. That and now they felt it, and the people who run the school said that students came up to them and said, "Hey, we want to become a scientist from this exposure." And so maybe it's not exactly the hardest metric, but that's, I think, some of the satisfaction that the fellows feel, and I think why the schools really want more fellows.
Right. The satisfaction, because you can measure that, the satisfaction for sure, they're there, and the students and so forth.
Yeah, no, we do post-school interviews, and we ask students their appreciation of science, following, and did the Science Corps fellow do things that their previous science teachers inspire them in ways. And so, and also they work with the local school teachers too. The fellows are part of the team.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And I think I'm going to share with you the database that we have for the Africa STEM network that is there.
Yeah.
Because by country, this is broken by country, so that you can just, pick a country and figure out who's doing what, where, and when.
Yeah, we would love to find some other schools.
Right.
I guess you hear from us that we're looking for, a certain kind of school.
Right. Exactly. Because you do your own due diligence to make sure that they're the right fit.
Right.
So Eddie, this has been fantastic.
Great.
And I'm really excited. And I think this is just probably the first conversation.
Yeah. This is great. I think we're kind of in the same sphere, but we're very different, doing very different parts of it. And thinking about it different ways too. Like I love to think about networks, of course, SAI, and I think you are kind of one of the nodes in there. And like other nodes, and like, cool. That's how can we work together, right? How can we both? And this is the thing for us is how do we? Because many people are doing different things, but how can we all help each other to build? Right. No, it's a funny thing. The network came from. I wasn't thinking about networks, about hub schools. We just happened to find these two schools that fit those categories. And then it suddenly said, hey, we got something rich here. We should keep on looking for schools that fit those categories. It wasn't how we started. We were
Right.
looking for schools where the fellows would have a rich experience and make a significant contribution. And it
Right.
turned out that these schools that were run by scientists, they were doing it because they wanted to interact with other schools also, and so it fit together.
Yeah, very, I like it, very Bayesian, I say. You kind of went into a role model and you get some new data and updated your belief, and now you're
Right.
operating in a very, in the new model. And I think I like that
Right.
aspect of the program is with the logical model on top of it, you're going to be able to update and change things as you go along to improve on it, right?
Great. Great.
So wonderful, Eddie. We'll be in touch
Okay.
soon.
My pleasure.
Thanks a lot.
We'll be in touch. Thank you very much.
Thanks. Bye.
Okay. Bye.